The yeas are 57. The nays are 43. Two-thirds of the senators present not having voted guilty. The Senate judges that the respondent, Donald John Trump, former President of the United States, is not guilty as charged in the article of impeachment. The presiding officer directs judgment to be entered in accordance with the judgment of the Senate as follows. The Senate, having tried Donald John Trump, former President of the United States, upon one article of impeachment exhibited against him by the House Representatives, and two-thirds of the senators present not having found him guilty of the charge contained therein, it is therefore ordered and adjudged that the said Donald John Trump be, and he is hereby acquitted of the charge in said article.
Mr. President.
Majority Leader is recognized.
Mr. President, I send an order to the desk.
And the clerk will report.
Ordered that the Secretary be directed to communicate to the Secretary of State as provided by Rule 23 of the Rules of Procedure and Practice in the Senate when sitting on impeachment trials, and also to the House of Representatives the judgment of the Senate in the case of Donald John Trump, and transmit a certified copy of the judgment to each.
Without objection, the order will be entered. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate, sitting as a court of impeachment on the article against Donald John Trump, adjourn sine die.
And without objection, the motion is agreed to. The Senate, sitting as a court of impeachment, stands adjourned sine die. And could we have order, please? The presiding officer, the acting sergeant at arms will escort the House managers out of the Senate chamber. And in order.
And after all that, it is over. Brian Williams here with you, along with Nicole Wallace. You're looking at the United States Senate chamber. Their lives were threatened. The chamber was looted and desecrated. Many of their desks were ransacked. And yet, at the end of this process, they have not found in sufficient numbers that Donald Trump incited that mob that showed up at the Capitol, many of them wearing tactical gear, replacing American flags with Trump flags. Earlier today, the Democrats had a chance to introduce a new front, a new chapter, and extend this trial with depositions and the like. They chose not to press the issue. In the end, the Democrats took a pass, and in the end, as you saw, no minds were changed. The vote was 57-43, the block of 7 Republicans that came forward during the test vote held together. No numbers were added to their ranks. Nicole Wallace.
You know, hot takes are so dangerous and so plentiful, and I resisted all week long pushing this week and this process through a political frame. I'll continue to do that today. At the end of the day, the record will reflect irrefutable evidence that Donald Trump did what Liz Cheney said he did, that he gathered a mob, he incited a mob, he sent the mob to march on the Capitol, and when it was underway, when his own vice president's life was in danger, he incited it further. Donald Trump doesn't disagree with those facts. Donald Trump's lawyers didn't really dispute those facts. So the defense of Donald Trump was around his right to say the things that incited the riot. There was no defense of his conduct during the siege. And I think that our kids, our grandkids will have access to all of this evidence put in the record.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.